Well, I'm glad to be back. So let's not waste any time. We are talking about what will our care force look like. Let's roll credits.
Ooh.
I don't get sick of that. I would play that at the end of every day or at the beginning of every day if I could. So we have some wonderful guests here to talk about what will our care force look like. We are digging deep into immigration and refugee reform and work that's being done in aging services. So without further ado, we have Andrea Price-Carter, the Director of Workforce and Technology Policy at Leading Age. We have Molly Tidwell, Program Officer for Community Engagement at Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. And we have Mary Klein, who is the Chief Human Resource Officer at Westminster Communities of Florida.
Hello, ladies. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us. So let's just jump right into it. The first question I have is obviously we're meeting because there is a workforce problem in our country. I think all of us agree on that. Um, is immigration reform and immigration programming a solution for those workforce problems? Andrea, I'd love for you to tag in on that one.
Yeah, so I'll just, start off, and I'm sure my co-presenters would agree that certainly workforce has been a problem for leading age and a number of the aging services providers. The pandemic made it a much larger problem than what it currently was. And, we decided that we needed to look at immigration more closely as an organization, largely because there would be opportunities where positions would be posted and we just would not have workers to fill them. So some of our larger members could have, just a number of positions for months that would just go vacant. And so the issue was that we needed to look at other alternatives. Just wanted to back up to say there's also a crisis of persons that are, as you probably know, getting older. And because of that, we just will not have enough professionals, aging services professionals, to be able to care for these growing number of aging persons that are happening every day. So with that, we just recognized that we needed to look at how could we really reinforce the number of workers that would be available to our members? Because just, within the US, they're just not enough. And so that was the whole impetus of why we started to look more closely at immigration policy, and specifically where it impacts bringing in more workers.
So, what have been the wins in the past few years or since COVID? What have been, well, that was the past few years, what has been the wins? Where have we really made our strides?
I would say, and if I heard you correctly, because it was just a little faint, um, I'll just note, there's a few members, particularly when we took some, I would say, more formal kind of research opportunities or surveys, who shared with us that their vacancy rates were so high that they had to oftentimes close a facility, and or because they didn't have enough staff on a particular wing that would allow for the quality care that the organization was accustomed to providing. So that impacted greatly the decisions that they needed to make as an organization. And so with that, I will just kind of pivot and say a couple of years ago, Leading Age came up with a plan. And that plan was, how can we increase the number of visas that bring in workers from foreign countries on a temporary basis? And so that's been one of the goals that we've had, working with other stakeholders where there's that opportunity, but opening up the visas that would allow for, let's say, those persons who are unfortunately categorized in a way that would allow us to hire more workers. So that has been the goal. And so we've looked more broadly at other immigration opportunities as well.
Wow, thank you. And so we work so hard to get them these visas, and they come here, and or we have refugees. We have a lot of refugees coming to our country right now, and so someone comes in on a work visa, or someone comes in on some by other means. They come here, they're looking for work, but also they have families that have to get services and all of these other things. Molly, how do community organizations work with organizations to help our guests or our new residents get established?
Absolutely. So, we know that immigrants bring talent, experience, knowledge, and adaptability to our workforce. And so, with organizations like the one that I work for, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, we are providing those services to refugees and immigrants as they come to the U.S. And so one of those key elements of our programming is employment. And so my role is to develop our employer partnerships across the U.S. So I've gotten the chance to connect with Andrea and others at Leading Age. And we have seen a lot of success in placements in aging service roles. Mary will talk a bit more about that later in the show. But, refugees, immigrants, they're often unafraid to learn new skills, and they're an incredibly hardworking, group of people. We see a lot of higher rates of retention for refugees in their workplaces compared to American-born populations. And so really my job is pretty easy, to connect with employers who say, hey, we really want to hire refugees. We have a workforce shortage. How can we do that? And so my role is to help train them and educate them on potential barriers that refugees might experience in workforce inclusion, and then working with them to, make an incentivizing offer to refugees. And through that process, we see them reaping the rewards of a stronger workforce, a more diverse workforce, and, an economy that's powered by hardworking, dedicated employees.
I love that. And Molly, I just want to follow up quickly, because I love that you're talking about welcoming this new culture. It's someone that identifies differently into the workplace, and you're talking to their future employers about this. What is some advice that you give when they are welcoming in immigrants and refugees? I would love to hear a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to one clarifying point on refugees is that refugees are entering the U.S. with the legal authorization to work. So it's even an easier population to integrate, because, as Andrea alluded to, you're not having to pave the way for them to have a work visa. So that's an important distinction there. But I would say aspects of inclusion that are really important are, having space for practicing religious parts of their life, having a prayer space, having, the types of food that are, in cohesion with their religious practices, having opportunities to even learn language on the job. I think that's one of the things that have been explored in aging service roles, is having conversation partners with residents or program participants with refugee employees, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is a wonderfully dual beneficial practice. But yeah, just, I think having a lot of intentionality around including refugees and immigrants. It's not just going to happen naturally. You will need to provide training to staff on inclusion and diversity, providing learning opportunities for your residents, your program participants, and also understanding a refugee background. In my experience, there is no one who has learned about or interacted with refugees who can't, kind of put themselves in their shoes and really come to it from a place of openness and curiosity, given the right situation.
Absolutely. I love that.
Wow, that is amazing. With training and certifying but it takes time. Have there been any, Andrea, I'd really love for you to touch on, have there been has there been any policy work on getting people certified rather quickly with education that they've had in their home country? Because if you have someone who's come as a nurse, but we don't have the regulatory policies to help them just easily move
Right.
into transition to that role here. What is the work being done there?
And I should have said that our work is to really, we are working to get Congress and the administration to change the current legislative laws or the statutes that are in place. So, a lot of what has been happening has been more administrative fixes, largely because Congress has not been able to come together and determine that this is what we're going to do on immigration policy. And unfortunately, even though a lot of these proposals are not controversial, but they fall within the realm of immigration. And so then that comes into the bigger discussion of the policies that have been a lot more controversial, largely because discussions then enter into, well, what are we going to do about the border? And they can't seem to take individual issues and get agreement and move these logical solutions forward within Congress. So what I would point to is the Biden administration. They've been doing a number of things along the administrative front. And that would be to look at ways in which they could provide legal pathways to citizenship and employment, or I should say with what they have worked out with a lot of their migration programs, also allows for employment opportunities. So more recently, there has been a program that allowed for more Venezuelan migrants to come into the country. And then that was recently expanded to 3 additional countries. And then there was also opportunities where private citizens could look at ways in which they could support, very much with what Mary will share, what she's doing within her organization and communities. They essentially just patch that up and expanded opportunities so that, let's say if it's private citizens of at least 5 individuals or organizations could come together and sponsor refugees. So there have been a number of programs that really have moved forward on an administrative level, while there have been a number of bills that have been introduced, and I can go into those later. But for the most part, we've seen the most progress from the administration. In addition, they have done efforts where they've increased the number of temporary visas that have been available to non-agricultural workers. So that's the H-2 visa program. So there's a cap on the number of persons that can be entering the country with that visa category. And so that was lifted at the end of last year to allow for 60,000 persons to come in within that range. So those are the types of, I would say, administrative activities that we've seen, particularly in the last several months, that really would allow for wider opportunities for more persons from other countries to come into the US and essentially be available to employers like Leading Age and our members.
Wow. And Andrea, if someone wants to learn more about this work, how they can become involved, even the bills, like if you are trying to learn more, where can you go, especially if you're a Leading Age member, but if you're not, where can you go as well?
Right. Now we have within Leading Age a workforce page on our website. And so as articles are written, fact sheets are developed, most of the information will be updated there. So that's a place that I would start. And
Right.
we certainly provide links to the federal government's websites that would contain more substantive information. If there's a new program, as similar to the one that I've mentioned, then we will provide that information there. So that's one place to start.
Great. And that's leadingage.org
Yes.
/topic/workforce.
Yes. So you have it. Thank
It's
you
like
for
you're
that.
reading it right now, Jordan.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're interested in learning more about the amazing work that Leading Age is doing on the behalf of workforce policy as well as technology policy, go to the website below.
And I just quickly, Jordan, want to say I particularly love this because this is tricky, right? And complicated and can be really difficult to understand. And I always like to say, as the one here that is the industry outsider, I'm always looking to learn and understand policy better. And I think this is a great place to go to kind of have that breakdown of all of the details. So I would highly encourage all of our viewers to check that out, particularly if you're an outsider like me and really trying to understand this policy. So please.
And so Molly and Andrea have both mentioned the amazing work that's happening at Westminster Communities of Florida. But before I give the mic away to Mary, I just want, Molly, if someone's interested in working with Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, how does someone get involved? How does someone figure that out? Where do they go?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. LARS is working in over 50 cities in the US. And so there's a good chance that we are providing employment services in your communities. I am busy connecting and pointing people to our preferred refugee employer initiative that was launched in January, where we invite companies to commit to fulfilling 5 of our best practices for refugee hiring, and then certify them as preferred employers of LARS, which means that they are eligible for joint marketing opportunities. And most importantly, we connect them with our pipeline of talent across our network. So you can reach out to us at lars.org /PRE. I'll put that in the chat. Or you can reach out to me at my email, mtidwell@lars.org. But I would love to hear from many of you following this call.
And you said /PRE.
Correct.
All right. So that's where to go to learn more about that. Now, as we have all been like at the edge of our chairs, wanting to learn about, Mary, please tell me about the amazing work that's happening. Start us back from the beginning. Like, how did we get to here where we are? And they don't even know what here is. Our viewers don't even know what here is, but I got to spend an hour talking to Mary.
We're ready for you, Mary.
Okay. So our CFO, Hank Keith, kept saying, we need to hire Afghan refugees that are being brought in, by plane since Taliban, came back in Afghanistan. And he kept saying it, and I kept ignoring him until finally I couldn't ignore him anymore. And so I attempted to contact the local Lutheran Services of Florida to see about partnering on employment, but they were in the midst of bringing in over 1,000 refugees from Afghanistan and trying to rebuild their team in order to accommodate them. So we ended up going a roundabout way and got a hold of them, and we were told, look, we're in a crisis right now for housing. If you could help us find housing, we can help pair the jobs. And So we had some housing that was around our properties that was rented, and we looked at that first as an option. And then we went into our towns that we have properties in and tried to co-sign and obtain apartments with loans. We, at the time, we ended up having to do, quite honestly, a lot of the work that normally the Lutheran caseworkers would have done, because they just had so many people in such a short period of time that they were just trying to get their arms around, the most essential needs. So we ended up furnishing the apartments. We bought the individuals food and the clothing they needed to start work. We hired them and put them to work. And then the understanding was, we paid their first month's rent till they got their first 2 paychecks. And then at the end of 1 year of employment, we gift back their first month, last month rent to them, because then they'll have a employer reference and a credit reference, and they'll have their deposits taken over in order to take the lease themselves or move to a home or wherever they want to go. We had a local nonprofit that was kind enough to provide a bicycle for every single one of our refugees. And we got out ahead of it. We had some concerns that the residents and staff may question a bunch of Middle Easterners coming into our midst. And so we wrote a letter explaining what we were doing and why we were doing it. And shockingly, of our 9,000 residents and 3,000 staff, we only had one person that called and raised an issue with it. And her son was on the phone with her and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed that my mom is doing this. We're hanging up now, and Mom, you and I are going to have a talk." And so that was it. But we found the exact opposite. Our residents went to their church groups and their retired Peace Corps groups and their church's social justice committees. And pretty soon we began hearing from everybody in our communities. How can we help? What can we do? How can we partner? For example, the retired Peace Corps group started an Amazon page where they put the basic household things on, and people could go online and select those items and have them sent to us to furnish the homes. Almost all the local thrift stores in town opened up their doors to us. Churches took over furnishing apartments for us. Our residents took over, sponsoring. We want to do 2 apartments, or we want to do 3 apartments. And they took pictures literally off their own walls and clothes out of their own closet to bring over. So we started with the goal of having 10 refugee team members over the period of a year. And we ended up moving in 110 people in 3 months, and 55 of them became our team members. The rest are family members. We moved very, very quickly because there was such a great need. And then we stepped back after 90 days with our partners, Lutheran Services of Florida, and said, let's regroup, and what do we need to do differently? How can we change things, and how can we enhance things? And for example, one of the things was we were concerned co-signing that if rent wasn't paid, it would affect our credit and our reputation in our towns. So we wanted to do a payroll deduction and pay the rent ourselves. And Lutheran Services felt that smacked of, they didn't know us, as well yet. And they thought it kind of sounded like company town and that we might charge too much for rent. And they really, really not want to do that. We ended up kind of compromising where we paid the rent, and then the individuals cashed their paycheck and brought the rent to our business offices. And that was better anyway, because it helped them understand where they go and how they have to pay their rent and so on. But it has just been, we've always been an organization. Westminster's a great organization, but we've always kind of been insular, for lack of a better word. We're well known and well received in our communities, but haven't done a lot of social partnerships. And this program, kind of by accident, has just caused us to be fully involved with everyone in our communities in a positive and wonderful way. And it's had an impact on our team members, on how they treat each other. It's had a profound impact on our residents. I know, Molly, you had mentioned English classes. One of our residents worked with the Peace Corps and established an ESL program, and they teach ESL classes in our communities. Our retired teachers have stepped up, and they teach ESL classes at 3 different levels in all of our communities that have the refugees. And now, so we have beginning, intermediate, and advanced English classes. And one of our communities has a lot of children, and they took an empty apartment and converted it to a classroom, got the local school district to donate children's desks, and they taught a summer program for the entire summer for the kids, really enhancing their language skills. They did theater, they did puppeteering with them, and just a phenomenal program. So, I just can't say enough, great things about the program. We've had some missteps. We've had some, cultural bumps that we were getting over and we got over, but, nothing, for example, one of our young men wanted his supervisor to broker a marriage with one of his coworkers, and we had to explain that we don't do that. And, we got, bicycles for everyone. And the very day we handed out bicycles, one of our young men rode into an intersection and got hit by a car because he didn't understand the traffic rules here. He was fine, but the next day the Sarasota Bicycle Club brought us 60 helmets. And, because they heard about it and they reacted. So we've just had one thing after another that has happened that way. And I was telling Jordan, I thought, being in the South, that we have a spirit of hospitality in the South. But I tell you what, being with particularly the Afghan communities, and now we're seeing Ukrainians, we've taken a Congolese family, a Syrian family, but particularly with the Afghans, their spirit of hospitality is so great. And it's really impacted, very tangibly how we speak to each other and treat each other. And I'm one of those people that jumps in, hey, Jordan, can you help me with this, 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 and this? And they always stop you. And how are you, Mary? And how is your family, Mary? And you recently had surgery. How is your health? And they recenter you and focus you on that personal relationship. And all of us can continuously be reminded of the importance of that.
Yes, Mary. I love that. And I love this idea of what feels like to me really bringing the community back into senior living, which feels like has been lacking for so long. And I almost feel transported back in time. And like to that saying, it takes a village, right?
Literally. It absolutely does. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I so appreciate your story.
And that residents are advocating at the schools with the kids. One of them called the other day, and we did hire one of the refugees as a liaison to help with translation, in particular with Dari. He was a liaison for the NATO officers in Afghanistan and an attorney. And he called yesterday and said there's a problem at one of the schools that they want to talk to the family, and a resident would like to go as their advocate. How do you feel about that? And I said, great, go for it. Wow. Because this resident was an educator and, has a relationship with teaching the children and the parents ESL, and, they're friends now. So I thought that was very appropriate. Wow. On the other side, I told Jordan, one of the elementaries is a mile away, and our residents were concerned and raised funds for a limousine to take the kids back and forth to school. And we had to draw the line there and say, no, not all of our team members' kids go to the same school, and they don't get to ride in a limo. And it was not a school that you would want to show up in a limo at. Let's just say that it would cause problems for the children. So, that's a great kind of problem to have to rein in things like that.
Love that.
Wow. This is amazing. This has been an amazing story. It's been an amazing episode. I just want to thank you, Andrea, for coming on. Molly, thank you for coming on. And Mary, thank you so much for telling about the amazing work that Westminster Communities of Florida is doing. That is just amazing.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you again for the invitation.
Absolutely, you guys. Thank you for educating little old me here. This has been incredible. I have loved these stories. I will be sure to drop all of the links to all of your organizations here in the notes when we post this on LinkedIn. And guys, we will catch you on the next one.
This has been amazing. I mean,
It flew by.
Yeah.
I am so
I
grateful
mean, it's
for our
already
guests.
right. It's
I'm like,
crazy.
how does this happen?
I know. I'm not crying. You're crying.
Yes.
I mean,
No.
it goes back to something I always talk about, like how senior living communities are supposed to be communities, but like we aren't often communities. We're often like this thing with walls, and
It's
we're
siloed.
segregated, we're siloed from the rest of the community. And it's crazy how you can solve your workforce problems with community and diversity and just being loving and, you know, living up to the standards that we set forth for our residents.
Absolutely. And I don't feel like this is necessarily so outside of the box thinking either. This feels like a real tangible solution to our workforce issues. So if you are a community and you're not looking at refugees or immigrants as a resource for your staffing, I mean, you heard it here, kind-hearted, hardworking, and big hearts, and really ready to understand and work in this industry. And that's all we can ask for.
And if you aren't ready to do that, there's diversity in your own community. There are schools that need help. There are children that need help. There are families that need your help. And, you know, as we just saw, is yes, we opened our doors to people that are coming to our country as refugees or new residents, but there are residents that we have that if you open your doors and do these community initiatives, you could really boost up your workforce.
Absolutely.
As always, thanks you everyone for tuning in. This has been Caring Conversations.
Absolutely. We will catch you next Wednesday, streaming on the Foresight YouTube page and our LinkedIn page. So guys, thank you for joining us.